Is going to start the recording and we'll get going. Okay. So first off, I realized I didn't introduce myself, but now the whole group is here, so I will do that. So I'm Christine DeBella. I'm the program manager for ArchivesSpace. And sort of my role in ArchivesSpace is to work with our different sort of the technical side of our program in building the application, the community and user facing part of our program that develops great programs and provides support to users, and also working with our governance board and councils on thinking about sort of big picture initiatives that we could be doing. Also with me, and Jessica, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Jessica Crouch. I'm the community engagement lead for ArchivesSpace. So I work very closely with our user community and our user advisory council. I do a lot of things to help our ArchivesSpace community help itself. So through the creation of documentation, resources, events, and programming. And I'm really excited to be here today.
So our team is pretty small, but we are very happy to work directly with people, even on all sorts of different levels. We have a presentation about this program, about a little bit about what ArchivesSpace is in general, and also some practical things related to if you or somebody else wants to apply, how they can go ahead and do that. Most of you here probably do. You at least know of ArchivesSpace by name. You may know about ArchivesSpace more specifically, but we thought we'd start with a little bit about what ArchivesSpace is for those of you who might be a little bit less familiar. So what is ArchivesSpace? So the first thing that people think about when they think about ArchivesSpace is it's an ArchivesSpace information management software application. So this is an open source application. You access it through a browser, so any browser that you have on your computer or your device, and it's used to describe and manage physical and digital materials. So it supports many of the functions that you would be doing in your archives, including accessioning, arrangement, description, preservation, and you can also provide public access to your community, however you define your community, through ArchivesSpace. We have a staff interface and we have a public interface. The staff interface is where you would probably be doing most of your work. It's the one part of ArchivesSpace that you absolutely have to have. And then our public interface is optional. That allows you to make your materials open to a wider audience. Something that sometimes people don't realize is that ArchivesSpace isn't a digital asset management system. You can't manage the digital files themselves within ArchivesSpace, but you can provide description for digital objects within ArchivesSpace. So you can kind of manage all the description for the materials in your collection, whether they're in a physical format or digital format through ArchivesSpace. And even though ArchivesSpace isn't a digital asset management system, you can link to materials in a different system or on a web server or integrate it with whole systems that do those things. And also, ArchivesSpace, one of the things that makes it very handy for people and very attractive for people is that it makes it easier to adopt archival standards and to learn from and share best practices that others have developed and also develop your own. It makes it easier to do some of this kind of work without having to sort of reinvent the wheel and coming up with these things yourself. So, but one of the other things that ArchivesSpace is, and I think one of the things that makes it especially valuable to people is that it's a community. So it's a community that brings people together from many different sizes and types of institutions and backgrounds. Our community includes completely volunteer run organizations. It includes some of the largest research universities in the world. So all of these people wouldn't necessarily have a reason to be operating in the same professional space. ArchivesSpace provides a platform for them to do that. And that means that they can also work together to sort of solve problems that they all have that are common no matter what your size of institution might be, challenges that you might face across all different kinds of institutions. The ArchivesSpace application, it's built by archivists for all kinds of different archives. And because we work together as a community, and we are the ones that work together as a community to build this application, we can ensure that this application reflects our values. So, we want to be flexible and extensible. We want it to be possible for people to use in many different situations. We want it to be standards-based, but also give people the opportunity to do things that make the most sense for those communities, for our own communities. So ArchivesSpace, because we as a community are the ones that directly influence what it is, we can make sure that it makes our values represented in what we are all doing. So ArchivesSpace, it's free to download and use. It's open source software. Anybody can go out there and download and use it and deploy it in their institution. But it's of course not free to make. So we do have an institution-based membership for sustainability. And that also allows us to further develop the application and make sure that it continues meeting people's needs. Members get benefits that help them use the application and also really connect with others around using the application, and even more than connecting or with users around using the application itself, connecting with others around using and managing archives. Members really are the ones that drive the initiatives that we have, the programming that we offer, as well as how the application gets built and what features and functionality are incorporated in it. Membership is certainly the biggest driver of sustainability for ArchivesSpace, but we also have ways that institutions can participate in other ways. So we have affiliated institutions, including registered service providers, institutions that provide services to other organizations that maintain their own archives, and also contribute to the sustainability of ArchivesSpace. So I wanted to just give a little bit of background on the diversity partnership and kind of how it came to be, and why it exists, what its purpose is. So our diversity partnership began in 2021. It was a 3-year pilot program to offer support for implementing the application to institutions that are either themselves underrepresented or primarily serve communities that are underrepresented in the ArchivesSpace community. Jessica will talk a little bit about the eligibility for the program and what we mean by underrepresented. So this initiative, like probably many initiatives, took shape in 2020 following the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And we had a lot of conversations within our community and within our governance about how could ArchivesSpace help? What about the ArchivesSpace community could be significant and contribute to meeting these challenges and solving the problems that were really like a magnifying glass. They didn't just start in 2020, of course, but sort of a magnifying glass was put up to them. And so sort of thinking about, well, what could ArchivesSpace possibly do for these big societal problems? So one of the things we thought about was sort of the expertise and the skills that we have within our community, the resources that we have within our community, and how they can serve archives specifically. How we could make it easier for archives to do things to serve their communities, and hopefully eventually also, the ways that archives help communities, ArchivesSpace could help those archives do those things. So we had a 5-institution cohort. They are, as I said, it was a 3-year pilot program. The 3rd year of the pilot is wrapping up now. We had a diverse set of institutions that represented sort of different kinds of archives that came on in the pilot. We had 2 HBCUs, Spelman College and Xavier University in New Orleans. We had 3 community archives, Detroit Sound Conservancy, which is specifically related to music and audio, community archives in Detroit. We also had the Black Cultural Archives, which is a community archives based in London, in Brixton, and also the Weeksville Heritage Center, which is another community organization based in New York City. So we did seek out to have different kinds of institutions represented in our inaugural cohort. And we also found that these institutions also had different experiences, and there was a lot that we could learn from the different institutions' experiences as we thought about whether this was a program that we could continue. We were very fortunate. It took planning, but we were also very fortunate that our governance board and our community recognized the value of this program, and the governance board approved a continuations. And this is going to enable us to enroll a new cohort. So the inaugural cohort is rolling off. There are ways that they will continue to be involved in the community, and we're bringing a new cohort on to get some of the benefits and be involved in some of the ways that we envisioned for this program. Our community members will also continue to be involved, including our registered service providers, Lyrasis and Atlas Systems, who will again be providing hosting for the organizations that come on as part of the inaugural cohort. And as I mentioned, really the way we've developed the program for this next phase was certainly shaped by the input and feedback from our inaugural cohort and what their experiences were. So I'm going to turn this over now to Jessica, who can tell you about some specifics of what this program includes and how you can participate.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Christine. All right. So Christine just gave a little bit of background information about ArchivesSpace, the ArchivesSpace program, and a little history on the diversity partnership. So I'm going to get into the logistics, like what does the program include and what are the expectations? So this partnership is a 3-year term. Something to keep in mind as you're considering applying. The expectation is your organization would participate for 3 years. The term will begin in July of this year and conclude in June of 2027. As part of this cohort, organizations will receive at no cost ArchivesSpace membership and access to all member benefits. I'll pause here and say this is the only offering that is required to participate in the partnership. All of the other resources that I'm going to outline are optional depending on the needs at your organization and what you determine is a priority for you. But ArchivesSpace membership is required, obviously, to participate in this cohort. And as an ArchivesSpace member, you have access to all ArchivesSpace member benefits that all general members receive, like access to our user manual, access to our listservs. This is where our users communicate with one another and also where the program team posts news and events and announcements. So it's a very great resource for talking to each other and learning about what the community is doing. And then also access to member-only events and programs that happen outside of the partnership. You would also have access to all of that as a member. You also would have the option of using one of our registered service providers, Lyrasis or Atlas Systems, to host your implementation. Optionally, you could decide to implement and manage your implementation at your own organization. If you have the IT capacity to do that, that's perfectly fine. Or you could go with a hosting provider. You also would have free ArchivesSpace training made available to you as part of this partnership. Training will be handled a little bit differently than it was in our last cohort, just based on some feedback that we got from our inaugural cohort. So if you've read anything or heard any other previous recordings, this is a little bit different. All of the partners in this cohort will have an initial training together where we will go over ArchivesSpace basics. We haven't developed the schedule yet, obviously, but I anticipate it probably being a multi-session training because we're going to go over some of the high-level functions of the application just to make sure everyone is on the same footing and getting started with ArchivesSpace in a way that is, meaningful. And then after that, partners are able to attend any ArchivesSpace training for free. ArchivesSpace regularly offers community-wide trainings throughout the year on a variety of topics, and these trainings are offered to ArchivesSpace general members at a discount, but for participants of this partnership, training would be free. You would just need to contact us and say, hey, I'm interested in this, and we would get you registered for that training. You also would have user and technical support for the duration of the 3-year term. So you could reach out to us with questions and we could point you in the direction of helpful resources. The technical support would be particularly beneficial if you decide not to use a hosting provider, but instead want to manage your own implementation. And then finally, this is new to this year's cohort and based on feedback that we got from our previous cohort, members will also have the option to receive hours with an independent consultant. Those hours can be used in whatever way the organization thinks would be most beneficial to them to help them implement ArchivesSpace. So if that's help migrating data into ArchivesSpace, if that's having the consultant help design some workflows, or just having the consultant look at your overall infrastructure and make some recommendations that would help with implementation of ArchivesSpace, it would be how the individual organization would define their needs for those consulting hours. And that is new to this cohort and was not something offered previously. Next slide, Christine. So who is eligible to apply for the ArchivesSpace Diversity Partnership? Academic minority serving institutions are eligible to apply, and some examples are listed here. If you're not sure if your academic institution qualifies, you can always email us and we can help you make that determination. Nonprofits or community archives primarily run by or serving BIPOC communities are eligible to apply, and tribal archives are eligible to apply. If you are currently or formerly a member of ArchivesSpace or a client of any hosting provider, you are not eligible to apply. And also your organization cannot be part of a parent institution that does not meet the above criteria. So for example, if you're maybe at an academic institution and you're not sure if the larger parent institution or university is a minority serving institution, you can always reach out to us and we can have that conversation. If you have questions about your eligibility, please don't hesitate to reach out and we can help answer those questions. Next slide. So the responsibilities of a partner, these are the things that the individual or the organization selected to participate in this cohort are expected to do. So obviously for the 3-year term, you're expected to be actively working to implement ArchivesSpace at your organization. And that looks different for every organization, I'll say that, but the expectation is organizations will be working to implement ArchivesSpace for the duration of the 3-year term. There's also the expectation to attend occasional ArchivesSpace Diversity Partnership meetings. Right now, our current cohort meets once a month. They have a standing meeting. It's a very casual time where if you're able to attend, we attend and we talk about all sorts of things, but questions about ArchivesSpace, hurdles and implementation, and just generally enjoy spending time with each other. It's a nice meeting to attend once a month. You'll also be asked to provide feedback about your experience implementing ArchivesSpace and also participating in this partnership. We do that through meetings, through surveys, through a variety of feedback mechanisms. It is anticipated that all of these meetings that I'm talking about will be online, and for the past cohort, there have been no in-person meetings. It's all been handled online. But if for some reason the need for travel would arise, travel support would be provided, but the expectation is all of this would be done online. And then finally, there's the expectation that partners will present at several ArchivesSpace community events during the duration of the 3-year program. And that could look like many things. Maybe it would be a webinar where a few of the partners could come together and talk about what they're doing. It could be where one partner wants to have 15 minutes at an online forum to talk about something very cool that they're doing. You could be asked to attend maybe a board meeting to give some honest feedback about how the partnership is going. So just the expectation that partners are active members of the ArchivesSpace community during the 3-year program period. And just one thing to note, you'll see at the bottom, all of the data in your ArchivesSpace implementation belongs to you. Even if you elect to use a hosting provider, the ArchivesSpace program team does not have access to your implementation. So we can't go in and use your data or access your data. And we certainly are not going in and like grading your progress or like in some way qualifying how your implementation is going. So I just wanted to say that. All right, next slide, please. So what are the responsibilities of ArchivesSpace? They are to provide at no cost to the partner all of those resources that I have mentioned, and make sure that we are continuing to provide regular opportunities for partner institutions to connect with each other. So it is our responsibility to provide the resources that we say we're going to provide, and then make sure that we are facilitating opportunities to connect with each other, like the standing meeting that I mentioned, and other ways for partners to better reach out and work with other members of the ArchivesSpace community. Next slide. So if all of this sounds interesting to you and you'd like to apply, you would download the expression of interest form and submit with it a no more than 2-page expression of interest to archivespacehome@lyrasis.org. That's our general email address. If you have any questions about any of this, please use that email address. And depending on the number and types of applications that we get, we may contact applicants for further discussion about applications. In the last cohort, we did receive so many applications, we did have some secondary interviews, so that is a possibility. Next, please. All right, so if you do decide to apply, what is the evaluation criteria that we're going to be using? We are going to be looking to find organizations, like Christine said, that are either are a type of institution or serve a community that is currently underrepresented in the ArchivesSpace membership community. So that we will be looking for organizations that meet that qualification. We also, just in keeping with that value, we intend to diversify the types of institutions or the community served by those institutions among the partners. So wherever possible, we will also within the partnership look to create as much diversity as we can. We also will be looking and evaluating the degree to which the applicant's expectations and organizational capacity match what the partnership is offering. So we will be looking in that statement of interest to see that what the ArchivesSpace partnership is offering is in line with the expectations of what the organization is hoping to get out of it. Obviously, we want to make sure this is a good match for both. So we're looking to see if organizational capacity or expectations match what this partnership offers. One example would be, obviously, if the expectation is the partner is going to be implementing ArchivesSpace for 3 years, we would want to hear how the organization intends to do that in terms of maybe like allocation of staff or other resources, just making sure that it's a good match and that expectations can be met on both sides. And then finally, we'll be looking at the demonstrated impact to the applicant's community, however you define community, if your collections are better managed and made accessible through ArchivesSpace. And again, accessible would be however you would define that. And we are currently expecting to accept up to 5 partners at this time. Next slide. All right, so important dates. The application deadline is April 12th. So if you would like to apply for the partnership, please submit your application by April 12th. And then June 1st, we'll notify selected institutions that they've been selected to be part of the partnership. Between April 12th and June 1st, we may be in contact, like we said, to ask some follow-up questions, but we will be making selections by June 1st. And then July 1st, the new cohort starts. Next slide. And then this is the last slide. So if you'd like to find out more, I know these are very long links to put on a presentation, but I will make sure that the slides are included with the recording and are available on our website. And you also can find all of these obviously directly from our website. But if you're interested in learning more about the partnership or how to apply, those links can direct you. If you're interested in learning just more about ArchivesSpace or resources to help you get started with ArchivesSpace, that second bullet point, our getting started page, is very useful. And finally, you can always get in touch with us. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to archivespacehome@lyrasis.org. Thanks. All right, that's the end of our presentation. So if anyone has any questions about the partnership or any of the information we just provided, we are here.
I have a question. Can you talk a little more about the difference between ArchivesSpace and a document access management system?
So ArchivesSpace is essentially for managing metadata about collections. So things about how you received a collection, what's in it, where it is in your stacks, things like that. So all kinds of things related to things about the collection, but not the materials themselves. So a digital asset management system, you can usually ingest digital files into the system. You could say move things around on file servers and things like that from within the system, as well as being able to create the metadata about the digital files. So ArchivesSpace can create all that metadata about the digital files, but it can't do all the things related to managing those files. You would need to do that either in a different system that is specifically called a digital asset management system, or some people use ArchivesSpace just in conjunction with their web server. Like they have a folder of files of images, digitized images, say, on a file server, and they link from records in ArchivesSpace to that. There's lots of different ways to work with sort of the way you want to provide access to your digital materials to make that work with ArchivesSpace, but you can't do it only with ArchivesSpace. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you for all of this information. I had a question about what was the word you call it, like the additional help that's offered in this 2024 cohort, like someone who's there to maybe help with workflow and assess. I just wanted to know a little bit more about what that looks like, or how often you could have those kind of consultations.
So we have, I think I need to check to be sure, but I think it's 100 hours for consultant hours that can essentially be used however you like. Within ArchivesSpace, we maintain a registry of independent consultants. So these are people that don't work for the ArchivesSpace program, but often are people that are very heavily involved in the ArchivesSpace community, know the application well. And so we have sort of a list of people that we could point people to. In the case of this program, we might be able to like make the connection a little bit more than we do sort of with people that just contact us in general seeking a consultant. With consultant projects, it's usually between the institution itself and the consultant to work out all the terms related to that, in terms of, how many hours are going to be spent doing different things? What are the deliverables for that? Is it something that requires somebody coming on site? Is it something that can all be done online? All the things usually would be worked out directly between the institution and the consultant. I think in a perfect world, we'd still see that being for this program too. But if a partner needs help with sort of figuring out some of those things, including sort of how to structure a project like that, we can be available to help with that. The work itself would still be done by the consultant, and it would still be for the partner to decide if the work is, satisfactory to them and things like that. But we would hope to, you know, whatever help a partner would need with that, up to doing all the work ourselves, we would be happy to you know, provide that kind of assistance. This is new, as we said, for this phase. So we haven't done this in the first phase, but we've done some other things, and we certainly have a wealth of experience having, you know, seen what people in the overall ArchivesSpace community, what kinds of projects they have needed help with in the past. So I think we could draw on that to help as much as we can.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question in terms of like I know that a few of these institutions were of varying sizes, and kind of what the expectation or how people were kind of gauging their success with the implementation. Yeah.
So I think for us on our side, the main thing that we are hoping for, and as Jessica said, we're not grading anybody on anything. The main thing that we're hoping for is that people will continue to make progress. Sometimes that includes realizing that ArchivesSpace isn't actually for them, that in some situations, you know, after they get to know the application more, after they get to know their capacity more, they realize that maybe in the long term, ArchivesSpace isn't for them. So that can also be an outcome. And that, I mean, honestly, I would see that as a successful outcome for the institution, is realizing this isn't the right path to go down. For other institutions that want to keep using ArchivesSpace, I think that steady level of progress, including we have, Jessica, I think we have one institution that has sort of like used this pilot period to think about how responsibility for ArchivesSpace can now be written into job descriptions, and or maybe like funding proposals they can make to their administration, things like that. So they haven't yet fully implemented, done all the things that they were kind of hoping to do at the start, but it's gotten them to the point where they figure out where they want to go next. Jessica, I don't know if you have any more you want to say on that.
I was just going to say that for any organization, and it was true within the 5 organizations in our inaugural cohort, there really is no perfect avenue for like entry into ArchivesSpace. There's no like, oh, you start here. It really is about taking the approach that works best for each organization. So one organization knew that making their collections accessible online was very important to them, and they really prioritize making the public user interface available, and now they have their PUI is live. Another organization had already had like a well-structured accession record. So they had all of these accession records for their collection. So entering through the accessions module made the most sense for them. And that was the pathway that they took into ArchivesSpace. So it really depends on the organization and where the organization is at, both in terms of like their archival description and also just in terms of their needs. And that's part of what happens with the partnership and just conversations as a community, sort of determining like what success looks like for each individual organization.
Would you recommend then in that case, let's say if you are a community-based archive space that might not have all the resources, kind of touching up on what Vida was saying, would it be possible then to set up a meeting prior to applying so that we might be on the same ground before we start applying and putting a lot of effort?
Absolutely, absolutely. Feel free to reach out to our general address there, which reaches both Jessica and me, and we'd be happy to meet with anyone individually to talk about that. And sometimes, sometimes it isn't the right fit, and we might be able to point you in a different direction if it isn't. I would say, like in general, for people that haven't started their archives at all, we probably wouldn't tell them to implement ArchivesSpace first. First, you got to get your archives together and think about, what you want that to look like. ArchivesSpace might be able to help assist with that, but it's not if you don't have an archives at all, it's probably not the place you want to go first. But we're happy to talk with any of you or anybody that you refer to us about the situation that you have. And we're not here in general, both Jessica and I are archivists. We come from the archives community. So the most important thing to us is not that people use ArchivesSpace, it's that people are able to do all the great things that archives can do and serve their communities that way. So we're happy to give you an honest assessment of, what might work best.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions or thoughts? Well, we really appreciate all of you being here this morning. We really appreciate if this sounds right to you, or if it doesn't sound right to you, but you think it would be great for someone else, we'd really appreciate you getting the word out. We'd love to hear from you if you have other questions or if you want to have an individual consultation with us about this program and about where your archives is at. We'd love to do that. So please do reach out. Jessica will be posting the recording and the slides, so that will be available soon as well. But unless anybody has anything else, we'll say goodbye for now. But thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.